friends, and welcome to the Happy Hour with Jamie Ivey podcast. I'm your host, Jamie, and I'm so excited that you're here. Every week, I invite a girlfriend to join me on the show, and we chat about the big things in life, the little things in life, and everything in between. I want to thank one of today's sponsors, and that is Lily Jade. Lily Jade creates gorgeous leather diaper bags that serve double duty as your go-to tote. Mother of two, Megan Wood, created this line to be with you through every season of motherhood and womanhood. Each tote is easily converted to backpack carry and comes with a removable and washable 12-pocket organizer. These timeless, full-grain leather bags will serve you well beyond the baby years. Lily Jade totes are perfect for play dates and dinner dates. They carry all of your precious baby items and handle your work needs like laptops and cameras with ease. Just remember, they had a huge success for Mother's Day, and so most of their popular bags are now on pre-order at a special discount price. So you're definitely going to want to check out their site today, lily-jade.com. Guys, you're listening to episode number 142, and my guest is Cheryl Scruggs. I actually heard about Cheryl before I knew about her daughter, Lauren. And if you remember, Lauren Scruggs Kennedy was my guest on episode number 137. And I just highly suggest you go back and listen to that show because she walks us through this tragic accident where she lost her arm a couple of years ago. But more than that, literally, I think Lauren is one of the sweetest people I've ever talked to. So today, I'm chatting with her mama, Cheryl. It was such a life-giving conversation. We talked a lot about her story, which involves infidelity, divorce, coming to know Jesus, and remarriage. You're going to literally have to hear it to believe it. And let me just tell you, if you're not a married person, this is still so relevant to you, okay? So everybody sit back and listen to this. Cheryl and her husband, Jeff, are the founders of Hope Matters Marriage Ministries, in case you're interested in looking up more about that after the show. Guys, before I introduce you to Cheryl, I want to remind you about the book club. Don't forget, if you want to be a part of this summer's book club, go to jamieivey.com/book club for all the information. Also, I have a super special guest at the end of the show. I'm going to talk to Kristen Schell, who is the author of the June Book Club. So stay tuned at the end. Her and I are going to chat for like 5 minutes. All right, here is my conversation with Cheryl. Hey, Cheryl, welcome to the Happy Hour.
Jamie, it's so great to be here.
It is fun to have you because you are the second mother-daughter duo that we've had on the Happy Hour.
Well, how fun is that?
That's super fun because your daughter Lauren was on in April. And then we've had another mother-daughter on the show before. So it's always fun to hear from moms of guests that have already been on.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's fun.
I know that you told me before we started recording how proud you were of your daughter and just listen to the show. And I know you're proud of her all the time. And so I can only imagine, since I'm a mom, but my oldest is 13. So you've got like you're, like a decade and a half ahead of me or something.
Yes, I am.
But you must be so proud of your girls.
Well, I am. The most fun thing is that God blessed us with twins. And just that in itself has been an incredible thing. Just the gift of them together and then watching them grow up together and be best friends and really just watching them navigate through life, even though they're so different.
They even, this is going to be a dumb question, and I'm sure you've gotten so many dumb questions as a twin mom. They don't look just alike, do they?
They don't.
Okay,
no.
Yeah. So that makes them what kind of twins? Give me a little medical lesson.
They are called fraternal twins.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're we had them through in vitro. We actually had trouble having kids, and so we were lucky enough almost 30 years ago to go through an in vitro program in Los Angeles, and we were blessed with them. So
was that a rather new thing 30 years ago? I don't even know that.
Well, it wasn't brand new, but we went through, there was a clinic out there that was incredible. A lot of people from around the country traveled there, and we just happened to live there in South Bay, Redondo Beach, South Bay Hospital. And they had a program there that they were on the cutting edge of just about everything. And so there were a couple things we did that were new. The egg retrieval, I was the first one to do, and it was a vaginal aspirated way of retrieving the eggs. And there were a lot of really cool things, but man, we were super lucky. So
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so your mom, and I know you have a new adventure right now that you are now a grandma.
Can you believe that?
Can you believe that? Does that feel weird?
I can't believe it. So my husband and I were talking about it the other day. Yes, first of all, it's just the most exciting thing. Most of my friends were already grandparents before me, and they kept saying, you are just not going to believe it. And oh my gosh, I just can't believe it. I'm addicted to her.
So does she live close to you, or have they moved away?
They were in Nashville for a couple years, and they moved back. Brittany and Sean moved back about a year and a half ago to start trying to have kids. And they got pregnant the first month. And so they've been back here for about a little over a year. And so Kate was born last October, so she's almost 6 months old, and what a personality. I know, it's just awesome. So they live about 12 minutes away.
Oh, that's just close enough for you to just hop on over there and get you a little baby love whenever you need it.
That's it. That's exactly right.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So Cheryl, we've been trying to connect, I think even longer than I was trying to connect with your daughter, Lauren, who was on the show in April.
Yeah.
And I just have heard just some fabulous things about your story. And I think we have some mutual friends, and you live just right up the road from us in Dallas. But what I want to talk to you about today is marriage.
Oh boy. Yeah.
I know. Right. And so I have been, let's see, this summer will be my husband, Aaron, and I's, I have to think about the year 16th anniversary.
Okay.
So we're 16 years in.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And I have always been someone who said I absolutely adore being married.
Yeah.
I love the companionship. I love my husband, obviously. But I do just love the do life with somebody kind of aspect of it as well. And so marriage has always been super exciting and great and fun for me. And unlike a lot of couples, Aaron and I didn't hit a hard year until about year like 7 or 8.
Yeah.
We had the time of our lives at the beginning, and we had some circumstances like just growing our family and stuff. It kind of added some kind of, pressures into our marriage. And that's when it hit for us.
Sure.
But a lot of people like you and I know hit hard times early. But I want to go back to like when you first got married. And
sure.
I want my listeners to hear your story, because you and your husband have a beautiful story that is literally just a story of just the gospel redeeming people.
Yes.
And so take me back wherever you want to start, and let's talk about your marriage.
Okay. Well, first of all, my husband and I have been married twice to each other. So people say, what? I mean, what is that? And so we met in Memphis, Tennessee, and I'll try to make this really brief because it can be a really long story, but we met in Memphis, Tennessee. I was in college. Jeff was working there. I was as Jeff always says, we share our story nationally, and he'll say, that song, I met my wife, she was a cocktail waitress, and that's where I met her. I can't remember the song, but anyway, so we met that way. I was putting myself through college, and he came into the restaurant and started flirting with me. And I was engaged at the time, actually.
Oh, I didn't know that part of your story.
Yeah. And so he asked me out, and I told him no, but I was so intrigued with him, and he was like super cute. And so I was like, oh my goodness. So I couldn't get him off my mind. And so the next week he came in and asked me out again. And I ended up breaking off with the other guy. Mm-hmm. I had dated him for a couple years, and anyway, it was a whirlwind. We, had this romantic relationship, did it all wrong in dating. We had sex before marriage. We practically lived together. And so not proud of all that, but that's what it was back then. And
now also, neither you or Jeff were followers of Jesus, were you, at this time?
Well, here's the deal. So Jeff grew up in a Southern Baptist home in West Virginia. I grew up in the Catholic home in Ohio. And so when we met, Jeff wasn't walking a walk with Christ, and I didn't know there was a walk. I would have called myself a Christian because I didn't know the difference. And so when we met, it was just, there was no spiritual talk about anything. And so we got married a year later after we met, and Jeff had gotten transferred to LA. And so we moved out there, and we were just going and blowing and doing that life. I mean, we had an ocean view home. We made great money. We, people called us Barbie and Ken. We looked like we had the perfect life. And for me, and just, as far as the church thing, we went to church, we were the Easter Christmas people. Yeah. And so, about 2 years into the marriage, I started feeling really empty. And I really didn't know what was going on other than the fact that I knew that I didn't feel connected to my husband. We had a lot of sex, but it wasn't really emotional connection. So I knew that. So
did you ever say that to Jeff, or was that just something like, hey, I just kind of feel it, and you stuffed it?
Well, I stuffed it most of the time. And then I would passively aggressively try to hint to him just about, hey, we need to talk more or whatever. And he'd be like, oh, okay, well, what do you want to know? This kind of stuff.
We've all done that dance at times. And yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah. And so I grew up in a home. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, super responsible. At that point in time in my mid 20s, I was pretty much a perfectionist type A, person. And so I was living that out. And I just really thought that what I was feeling, was really kind of crazy, and that how could anyone feel this way when I have the life that I do? And so I kept it to myself, and I was really fearful. Turns out now at 58 years old, I know a lot of things that I didn't know back then. And I had my husband on a pedestal. I was fearful of talking to him because I was thought he'd think I was, stupid for feeling the way I did. So I buried it down really, really deeply, and didn't talk to one person about it. Not my family, not girlfriends, and especially not Jeff. And so we were both in sales, and 8 years into the marriage. Well, let me back up. So about 6 years in, we start trying to have children. We ran into some issues. And as I told you before, ended up having our girls through in vitro. So I thought that was the missing link, as a lot of people do. And so I was okay for about a year, breastfeeding the kids, just consumed with that. I worked a little bit. And I started to feel really empty again. And I thought, golly, what is the deal? And so I went away to a sales meeting that I went to every year. I was always one of the top sales reps. And when I got there, it was in Florida. And I started talking to a guy that I'd known for a really long time. We had the same position in the company. And he started to share with me, he was having issues in his marriage. And for the first time in my entire marriage, I started to share what I thought my problems in my marriage were. Unbeknownst to me, I grew up in a home where my dad bought a golf course in 1967. I was used to being around a lot of guys. I wasn't promiscuous growing up. I was super responsible. I didn't give my parents any trouble. And I didn't think anything of innocent flirting in my office or, talking to another man by myself. I just had never had any guidance in that about guarding my heart or anything. And so I started talking to this guy, and that led to us talking till 5 o'clock in the morning. A lot of people want to know, did anything happen physically? And no, nothing happened. And went home to our respective cities. He was in San Francisco and I was in LA. And when I got home, I realized that I felt like my heart was being stolen. And I was connecting with someone like at that moment in time, feeling like I'd never connected with a man before. So didn't understand deception, knew what I was doing was wrong, and all of that. And so this was back in 1990. It was 27 years ago. And we only had landlines. So we didn't have, thank goodness, cell phones and all of that. And so we started talking on our landlines from the office. That was in March of 1990. And in April of 1990, he came down to LA. And we met at a hotel, and it became a full-blown adulterous affair at that point. Lots of stuff there. And so that same month, Jeff found out that we were being transferred to Dallas. He was with Oshkosh B'gosh Kids Clothes. And we were coming here he was going to call in the JCPenney account. And I was actually excited. I thought, oh my gosh, I can run away from this thing I've gotten myself into.
Because were you feeling like this is doing something, but I feel really wrong about it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I felt like I was two different people.
Mm-hmm.
My kids were, at that point they were 17 months old. I felt like, who is this person?
Mm-hmm.
I keep calling this guy, I keep feeling almost addicted to it. And, now being in marriage ministry, like my husband and I are, understand, the dynamics of affairs and adultery. And you do feel like you're two different people, and you do feel like it's almost like a drug. Yeah. So we moved here, and we started building a home here, and I thought, gosh, I can just forget what happened, start working on my marriage. And I missed the emotional connection I had with this guy. And so I started talking to him from here, which led to a year later, 1991, I filed for divorce. Jeff couldn't figure out what was going on. He said he thought I was crazy because I didn't tell him the truth.
But you didn't fess up to everything.
Well, and I didn't. And the reason I didn't, I have one reason. And that was I thought he would take my kids away from me.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I wish now at this, almost 30 years later, that I would have told him the truth and all of that. But that's not what happened. And so, yeah.
So in his eyes, was this just out of nowhere, or did he?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was out of nowhere. He found me crying on the bed one day, and he said, babe, what's wrong? And he thought something was wrong with my mom. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what, Jeff? I don't love you. I don't think I've ever loved you. And this was 8 years into our marriage. And he said, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so as our pastor, Matt Chandler's our pastor, we go to the Village, and Matt's interviewed us a couple different times, first time back in 2005. And then just recently last summer. And his question to Jeff was, Jeff, were you asleep at the wheel, or was Cheryl just a good actress? And, in reality, both are true.
Yeah.
So I was acting. I wasn't trying to be an actress, but I was definitely.
But you were almost feeling as though you had to, because you were looking out for your girls. And, I'm sure, and I would ask you this question, I'm sure deep down you wanted your marriage to be what you wanted it. You wanted it to fulfill you.
Absolutely.
But you felt as though it wasn't.
Absolutely. So, so I filed 91, but when we first got to Dallas, we started going to church for the first time in our marriage. And for me, it was, it's kind of like people do that when they're in trouble, right?
Yeah.
I think we should start going to church. So we did that. And what was so awesome for me is that every sermon that I heard, and every song, I was sobbing every week at all the, I felt like the pastor was talking directly to me. I felt like every song was written for me. And I didn't realize at that time that was Jesus coming after me.
And this is pre-divorce.
Pre-divorce.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the Holy Spirit was just moving really big time. But I was so hard-hearted, Jamie, up until that point, because, it started in year 2 for me. So now this is year 8, 9. And so I just could not get myself back to the marriage. I was so angry with Jeff, and I just thought the only answer is divorce. And I've met the man of my dreams.
Right.
It was this other guy. So I divorced Jeff in August of 1992, actually August 21st, 1992. And as, that was a tough day. I went to the courthouse by myself. And when the judge, hammered the gavel down, I buckled at my knees because I knew it wasn't right. And it was devastating. It still brings me to tears now.
Yeah.
Actually.
And, I think like even just hearing you talk about it, and even when I talked to your daughter, Lauren, we talked about it a little bit, is I think so many times like your story is so not original in so many ways of, I feel like the way you just described the way that you were kind of walking through your marriage, if it started in year 2 and now you're at year 8 and nothing had been dealt with, I feel like there is this kind of, and you can attest to this since this is the work that you do in profession and ministry. I feel like there is this sense almost of shame of needing to work on your marriage.
Yeah.
And I don't, I would love to hear, because you're a professional, where does this come from and why do we feel this way? I mean, do you sense that at all?
Well, yeah, I think if, people coming or going to counseling or, coming to see Jeff and I, they feel like that's a taboo thing.
Mm,
Not all. I mean, I
hmm.
think some of that has to do with maybe the culture of a church that they're in,
Hmm.
where if you're in a pretty vulnerable church, going to counseling is a good thing.
Yeah.
Getting help, and
Hmm.
we strictly do biblical counseling,
Hmm.
and so everything we do is from the Bible. But after we divorced, I started going to a church by myself. Met some incredible people, women, and I'll tell you, I sat there every week and kept hearing the gospel over and over. And 2 months after our divorce was final, I came to know the Lord personally
Mm,
and became a Jesus follower. And, as great as that is and was and all of that, it was devastating to see what I had left behind me.
mm.
And so I finally understood that although Jeff and I had some, pretty substantial issues as far as dealing with emotional connection, we had to learn how to do that. But a lot of the missing link was Jesus in our marriage.
Jesus. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. And so when I became a believer, man, I was 33. I kept saying, why didn't anybody tell me this stuff? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to go to Tommy Nelson's Song of Solomon study back
Hmm.
in 1993. I saw it live, which was awesome. But what God was doing with me is he was showing me, look, you and Jeff didn't do it the right way.
Mm.
And I want to give you another chance to do it again. And so it was really pretty crazy. I was learning how to read the Bible. I was reading books on Christian marriage. I was journaling. And one morning I woke up and it was almost like I didn't write it on the page, but it was, I tried to write out my prayers. I'm a brand new Christian, so I don't even know what I'm doing. But so I write, pursue reconciliation of your marriage. And I was like, there is no way.
Okay, but what's happened with the other relationship?
Yeah. So at that point, I was in a full blown relationship. We were talking marriage. He was going to move to Dallas. I mean,
Okay, this is
yeah,
crazy. I didn't realize that.
yeah. And he actually moved here.
Okay.
And so I have this collision of,
Mm,
my gosh, I think I'm going to marry this person, which never felt right. I was hearing pursue reconciliation of your marriage. Jeff and I got along fine. We lived 5 minutes from each other. We did the visitation thing as best as we could with the girls. And I was petrified
mm,
because I was so lonely in my marriage that I thought I can't do that again.
mm.
And so God just really started working on my heart, and he had me write Jeff a letter. I was understanding what repentance meant for the first time. And I wrote him he laughs, 16-page handwritten
Oh my gosh.
letter. Yeah. And I asked him if I could come over and read it. Or I didn't say that. I said, could I come over and talk to you? And he said, well, if it's not about the girls, we have nothing to talk about. And I said, could you please give me 10 minutes? And he said, I guess. I mean, Jeff's an awesome guy. So
But he was hurt.
he was, yes, because he did everything he could to
Yeah.
keep the marriage together. And so he let me come over, and I said, listen, I've written this letter. If you could just let me read it. And then, so we don't get in some fight or something.
I'm picturing like when Santa Claus opens up the good list and it starts rolling down the ground. That's what I'm picturing your letter looking like. Like, just give me 10 minutes, 16 pages later.
Yeah. And so I had asked him to sit next to me, and he said, absolutely not. And so he sat across from me, and I read the letter. I never looked up. And at the very end, I said, Jeff, and the letter was all the things I felt like I had done wrong in the marriage.
Mm,
And at the very end, I said, Jeff, I've become a Christian, and I feel like God wants us to put our marriage back together. And so when I looked up, he had tears running down his face. And I thought, oh my gosh, God's put the same message on his, heart.
yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, I will never, ever get back together with you. Don't ever talk to me about it. We'll do fine with the girls. That is a no. And so I was super confused.
What were the tears for? Just thankful for your repentance?
Well, what he always says is he missed the kickoff to the Cowboys.
So he was mad that you were like 15 pages in, and he's like, we need to get this thing going.
Yeah. So I was confused because I thought, as much as I knew about hearing from the Lord, I thought I had heard from the Lord. And so I walked out the door and I'm like, golly, what was that then? So I went back and, every day I was getting up at 5 to hang out with the Lord. And I got up the next day. I'm like, Lord, what was that? And he said, I have another path for you before we can get to the reconciliation. And that was understanding who God is, who Jesus is, how to love God, that this really wasn't about our marriage. This was about Jesus. And so that was a 5-year process.
5 years. And you guys are cordial. You're raising your girls together.
Yep.
You're growing more in love with Jesus. And how's his relationship with the Lord?
Well, what he would say is that he was helping with a high school youth group, and he was going to church and all of that. He wasn't really pursuing God as much as he would have liked. And God brought him to a place of, look, you walked the aisle when you were 9, but you don't really know me. And at 36 years old is when he feels like he really took on his personal relationship for himself. Yeah. And so what that did is a couple things. We started, there's so much detail, Jamie.
I'm sure this is 5 years.
Yeah. So, he started coming over for dinner. I call year 5 to year 6 dating as a family. And Jeff didn't really want to take me out on a date, and he was still, kind of angry, but he was being very loving and understanding that he played a part and that he didn't lead me. And he wasn't the leader spiritually. He would say he wasn't the leader in a lot of ways. So we started doing that. And year 6, he started asking me out on dates, and we started doing that. And finally, after 6.5 years, I was exhausted. Yeah. And they were off at Sky Ranch camp. And I said to Jeff one day, I said, what are you waiting on? I mean, we've been, we did 5 years just, working together really well as parents. We've been dating as a family for a year. Now we've kind of gone on dates without telling our girls. And they were praying for this for a long time. They were like the Parent Trap.
That's what she told me on the interview. I was like, it sounds like the Parent Trap.
Yeah. And so he said, you know what, Cheryl, how do I know you're not going to do the same thing? And I was like, that's a legit question.
Yeah, totally.
And so I just sat there for a minute. I'm like, Lord, I'm trying to do everything according to what you want me to do, what you want me to say, be like Jesus, all of that. I don't even know how to answer this question. And God gave me the perfect words. And the words were, Jeff, this isn't about you. And this isn't even about our marriage. This is about God. And I never want to disappoint my God again. That's when we decided to get remarried. And so,
golly, Cheryl, that just gave me chills.
Thank you. It brought me to tears.
Yeah. 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 Oh my gosh. That is because, the fact that God had placed that on your heart, it's just the Holy Spirit working in you, because that's a hard question to answer to someone who's been hurt so deeply by you. Yeah. But the truth of it is when we look at our marriages, as like the way that we serve our husbands and the way that we love is because of how we have been so greatly loved. Yeah. Exactly. And so it does change things when you're looking at like a Christ-centered marriage and parenting and everything. So, oh my gosh, that just gave me chills.
Yeah. And so, we ended up, we were divorced almost exactly 7 years. And, the people always ask, what's the difference between the first marriage and the second? And the first it was a non-Christ-centered marriage. And we were just living a very worldly life, and we were good people. Yeah. But we didn't communicate, and we didn't share our hearts vulnerably. We look good on the outside, you know, and honestly, we didn't even really fight in our first marriage. And now we fight more in our second marriage than we did in the first. And the reason is, marriage is worth fighting for.
And And you're talking and you're being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've been back together almost 18 years now. And
wow.
It's been amazing. Yeah.
That is so amazing. You guys, I told you that her story was amazing. Am I right about that or not? Guys, I want to thank some of our sponsors for today's show. Today's show is brought to you by Sock Club. You know what's right around the corner? That's Father's Day. Father's Day is on June 18th, and we all know that dad is sometimes the hardest member of the family to shop for. But thankfully, Sock Club is here to help. Sock Club is a Sock of the Month subscription service that sends a pair of quality, American-made socks straight to your door every single month. This is a little gift with a huge impact because each delivery brings a brand new, never-before-seen sock design specifically created for that month. And you can write a customized gift message so your loved one remembers you every time they receive their gift. Guys, I gave Aaron this for his birthday last year. For his birthday, he got a 3-month membership. I just recently gave this to my mom for Mother's Day. So I bought a pair of Sock Club socks. I put them in a bag, and then I put a little note in there that says, for the next 3 months, you're getting new socks. They also have 12-month memberships, which I have for myself. So every month a new sock opens, and it's so much fun. Like I said, you can print the membership certificates anytime. So the last-minute shopping can look like expert gift givers, guys. You just print this off. As a special to our listeners, you can get 15% off when you go to sockclub.com and use the promo code HAPPY at your checkout. That's sockclub.com, promo code HAPPY. Guys, give a delightful gift experience, give comfy feet every month, and give Sock Club this Father's Day, or any other day for that matter. Guys, today's show is also brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring? Do you know where to post your job to find the best candidates? Finding great talent can be tough. Thankfully, with ZipRecruiter, you can post your job to 100 plus job sites with just one click. Then their powerful technology efficiently matches the right people to your job better than anyone else. That, my friends, is why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other job sites, ZipRecruiter does not depend on candidates finding you, it finds them. In fact, over 80% of jobs posted on ZipRecruiter get a qualified candidate in just 24 hours. No more juggling emails or calls to your office. Simply screen, rate, and manage candidates all in one place with ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use dashboard. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. And right now, my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, guys, for free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/HH. That's ZipRecruiter.com/HH. One more time to try it for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/HH. All right, friends, here is the rest of my conversation with Miss Cheryl Scruggs. I just love your story, and there were so many pieces. I was like taking notes of things I wanted to talk to you about, like after everyone heard where you've been. A couple of years ago, Aaron and I have made this sort of kind of commitment to each other. He's on staff at a church, and a lot of the pastors have this as well, is to not be alone with someone of the opposite sex.
That's right.
And I think a lot of people can look at that and say it's legalistic, it's dumb, you don't trust your spouse, all these things.
Right.
And for us, it is to be not only above reproach, because that's one thing, right?
Right.
But for me, as someone who every single time I travel, Cheryl, every time I'll be sitting at a restaurant eating by myself, and I look around and I see business people, and nothing against business people. I travel for a living. I see people having dinner, and I know it's not with their spouse. And I text Aaron every time, and I text my girlfriend Amanda, and I say, I could not live this life. Like I could not have dinner with somebody else that's not my husband, because I know my sin tendencies. I know I'm a sinner. I know I pursue my flesh, like all these things. And so you mentioned that about when you went to that restaurant and you were alone with this man. Is this the advice you give couples as well?
Absolutely. I wrote a whole series of articles for Focus on the Family's website on guarding your heart in your marriage. It's you. Back then, I mean, I would have told you I'm a strong person. I never, step outside my marriage. I didn't realize how tempting that can be and how it can just throw you, so off course you can't even, you're spinning. And so, Jeff and I, we have a policy. He never sees a woman by himself. I never see a man. I never have coffee or lunch or dinner with a man by myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe my two son-in-laws.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
like that. Look,
Yeah.
here's a funny story about that. Just the other day, I went to Whole Foods and I was gonna I had like an hour and a half, right? So I'm gonna get some lunch and I'm
Yep.
going to work on my computer.
Yeah.
So I go make my salad, all kinds of things, and then I go put my stuff down at a table, and it has 4 chairs. It's like a square table with 4 chairs,
Yep.
kind of a rectangle. So there's 2 on one side, 2 on the other. I put my stuff down, and right when I'm putting my stuff down, a man leaves the little bar area and puts his stuff down right next to me, like
No way.
in the chair next to me. He goes, "Well, the bar's kind of hard to eat at. Do you care if I sit here?" And I was like, I was so like flabber, like, what? I don't know what's happening right now. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I thought he's gonna put his stuff caddy corner or across from me. And I thought I can do that, right? Because it's like a coffee table, coffee room, whatever.
Sure.
I go get some dressing on my salad and I come back. No, his stuff is right. If I were to sit in that seat, we would have been touching shoulders, sitting right next to each other.
Sure.
A man I've never met in my entire life. And I thought to myself, I can't sit here for a couple reasons. I don't think I'm like nothing's gonna happen in a Whole Foods, obviously. But I'm like, what if people come in and see
you? Yeah.
Jamie Ivey, her husband's a pastor at the Austin Stone, having lunch with this man?
That's right.
And I know that there's some people who actually are maybe mocking this right now, honestly, because I think a lot of people think that's dumb. You know, it doesn't matter what
Right.
people think. But I think it kind of is really, really special that I'm willing and you're advising other people that your marriage is so important that it does matter.
Well, the thing is, you don't ever want to put your marriage in jeopardy.
Mm.
And, we all, like you said earlier, we all have sin tendencies. Golly, I mean, we really shouldn't mess with temptation.
Yeah.
It's very powerful. And, for me, after all that happened, now it's been almost 30 years for me now, but I wrote our book at a Starbucks, every Starbucks in Dallas practically. I couldn't write at home because I'd want to do laundry and everything else.
I'm the same way.
Yeah. So I would go, to a coffee shop and intentionally I would have earphones in. I did have men come up to me occasionally. And honestly, I just wasn't very nice. I mean, I wasn't, mean, but I wasn't friendly.
I know. And I should have, like, looking back at that, I'm so like anti-confrontational. And finally I was like, I'm just going to go sit outside. It's so beautiful. And he said, looks like it's going to rain. You might want to stay here. And I was like, I'll try it. And then as soon as I walked outside, it started pouring down rain. So I just drove home. But I was like,
That's so funny.
I know. My friends were like, you should have just gone to another table. And I'm like, I know, but I felt weird. But that was a funny story from my life this week at Whole Foods with a random stranger wanting to sit next to me. But it is about guarding everything.
Well, it is. And it's hard. The one story I have that was just incredible. I can't even understand how someone can think like this. But anyway, I'm at a Starbucks and I had a meeting with a gal and then I was going to, continue writing and stuff like that. And so I'm walking out the door and I have this guy walk out behind me and he said, excuse me. And he has a business card and he hands me his business card. And he said, gosh, you're one of the prettiest women I've ever seen. I'd love to have coffee or lunch or something like that with you. I didn't know you were married until you stood up and I saw a ring on your finger.
What?
Right.
Who does that?
Exactly.
Is that normal?
I don't know.
Cheryl, you're just so beautiful it happens to you because that's never happened to me. That's crazy. But then I'm confused as to why he saw you're married. Why did he go through with it?
That's what I'm
weird.
That's what I'm talking about.
Weird.
Like, really? And I said, actually what I did is I took his business card and I was going home at the time. I was actually going to pick up the girls from school and I walked in the house and I put the business card at my husband's seat. And I said this, I just want to let you know what happened today because that's how, I all out in the open,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So. That's crazy. Yeah. So I think it's important to have those conversations and I always encourage women to do that. Another thing you talked about when you said this is you said, I had never told anybody how I felt.
Yes.
Not my friends, not my family, not Jeff, anything.
Right.
It brings up a great conversation about just community and why that matters in our world. And looking back 30 years ago, do you think a community of women, we're also going to have to assume that we're talking like a gospel biblical community. So
Sure.
we're going to throw all that in the mix. Do you think that would have made an impact?
I think it would have been huge.
Yeah.
And that's what Jeff and I talk about all the time. In fact, one of the big things that we talk to couples about is making sure they do have biblical community. And if you're struggling, we find that a lot of couples will try to hide their issues and they just look great on the outside and won't tell people what's really going on. And they're afraid to, afraid to lose friendships, shame, all that. And so we try to explain, how important that is, that's why we need biblical community, is to share our weaknesses and bounce things off of people. And when we're struggling to ask for help.
I know. Yeah. I'm so thankful for the community that I have, but I look back and I've seen some other people have some kind of big, we'll call them quote unquote big failures. Cause sin is, but we'll call it, for the sake of this conversation, like a big failure. And I look back and I see a lot of times you will see a lack of community, a lack of people really, really willingly pouring into your life with truth and love.
Right.
And I think that is, a big, big, big step for someone to have. Okay, Cheryl, there are thousands of women listening. There's no doubt that someone is listening right now who is thinking, I don't think I can do my marriage anymore.
Yep.
I think that I can't do it. Divorce is the only answer. Without knowing, obviously, the 8 billion different scenarios that could be happening, what do you say to someone like that?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had had someone in my life that said divorce isn't the answer. And I feel like, our culture makes it so easy. And I feel like in a lot of cases, people don't want to really work very hard at the struggles. And so, what I would say to people is, and what I do pretty much every day, is that, when you think about, okay, so what I wasn't thinking about is the ramifications of my kids. I thought they'd be fine because we're great parents, and how that's impacted them even up until this point in their life, and then just, thinking back on, what did you expect out of your marriage, and that marriage should be us serving one another, not about us getting what we want. And I think for women especially, we have expectations and what we think marriage is going to be like. And, I'm embarrassed to say this, but when I was a kid, I watched soap operas.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought it was.
That's what you thought it was going to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's, really, before you would take any type of a step like that, is to really get help. Go get help. Go to counseling. Go to your pastor. Some churches have counselors on staff. And do everything you can to work on the marriage. And, Jamie, there are so many different scenarios. It's you can't even state them all.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible. Right.
Yeah. And I know, like, for Jeff and I was like out. I had been gone from my marriage for many years before even I started talking to this guy. So emotionally, I'm talking about.
Yeah. Right.
So I was there every day, and I was putting on because Jeff said to me one time, well, what about all those cards that you wrote to me? Did you not mean what you said in them? And of course I did. I wanted my marriage to be great. Yeah. And frankly, I adored him. And so it was just an awful place to be. But, we aren't thinking a lot about what's going to happen after divorce happens, and that every milestone. So it can be birthdays, holidays, it can be, maybe a grandparent dying, or all kinds of different things. We're not thinking about that stuff. So, Jeff and I had the normal visitation. So every other year I didn't see my kids on Thanksgiving, and every other Christmas morning, we didn't see it. It's just that kind of stuff.
I asked Lauren on our interview, I remember, because we talked just a little bit about what it was like growing up with her parents married and then divorced and then remarried.
Yeah.
And I asked her, I said, has this, because I know she's, fairly newly married, and I asked her, did that affect your view on marriage at all? Did you ever feel almost scared of it or distrust because you had a front row seat to divorce. And I was very surprised because what I expected was, yeah, I was really afraid of it, but I'm jumping in. I love Jesus. I love my husband. Here we go.
Yeah.
But that's not what I heard. What I heard from her was it actually gave me a more adequate view of marriage.
That's
that
good.
It was hard, and so that even, I don't know why I just got choked up when I said that, but it is so true because I think like when you were talking about how you viewed the soap opera type marriage, and to see an adequate view of marriage is that it is hard, but hard doesn't mean bad, and it's worth fighting for. And so just as encouragement to you, I really loved when Lauren said that it was like, man, it actually gave me just a more adequate view of not what marriage is supposed to look like. Because obviously you had some failures, but of the work that you guys put in to make it what it is today.
Well, right. And I think, thinking about, there is no perfect marriage out there. It's
right.
It's never going to happen. And when we can,
and no perfect husband, like,
well, yeah,
just all you women listening.
Yeah. But I feel like if we have to remember that we're a sinner married to a sinner. And, when we can realize that we're on the same team and we're walking this journey together, that's when it can work really well. And people say, oh, well, you and Jeff, you just look like you have the perfect marriage. Well, no, we don't. We don't have a perfect marriage, and we work hard at it. And so we're never going to have a perfect marriage, even though we do what we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's the beauty of it though, is that we get to walk this journey together with the Lord. And, marriage, as Gary Thomas talks about in his book, Sacred Marriage, marriage is like a full length mirror, Yeah. And you're looking at yourself like, oh, brother, who am I? Exactly.
Yeah. All of some of your worst qualities, they seem to come out at moments when you're like, I never knew I struggled with anger. And now all of a sudden here it is.
Yeah. And you know what, Jamie, I think one of the things I have such a passion for, and I'm actually getting ready to start a podcast myself for women, but is that women, how do I say this? So what I see is women may have a decent grip on themselves prior to marriage, maybe even the first part of marriage. And then when all of life starts to happen and we have children and then, work gets involved and then we have a home and we, just life, we lose a lot of our identity. And I think our identity first being in Christ and who we are. We're a daughter of the King and all of that, and really letting that soak in, and then really trying to understand yourself as a woman, because I think all of it comes together in one big glob sometimes. So we're a wife, we're a mommy, we're a friend, we help, or with things with, maybe church or whatever we help with, and maybe we have a career. And when we get all that together, we lose our sense of, who we are as a feminine woman, who we are sexually, who am I emotionally, what am I about physically? All these kinds of things. And I think that's just really important for women to think about.
I think it's very important because I hear you touching on so many issues that maybe I've even felt myself, and that I also feel a lot of women who are just a couple stages behind me, especially Cheryl with little kids.
Right.
That's when I feel like it just like hits you and you're attacked constantly of what happened to who am I? Who am I anymore? Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so tell us about this new show, because I love listening to podcasts and I will listen and I want everyone else to listen. So tell me,
when are you starting
it? Okay. Well, tell us about it, the name and when it's coming out and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So it's called Thriving Beyond Belief. And my goal is somewhere around June the 1st. And, the reality is that life seems chaotic. For a lot of people, we feel like we're stressed out. Life is crazy. The word busy is used like every other word. And, what are we going to do with that? We feel like we're alone a lot of times. People aren't helping us. And so I want to help women understand their identity. I'll be interviewing other women and having them be basically a guide with me in certain areas of life, and trying to understand how to manage it. And yeah.
Well, it sounds fabulous. And when it comes out, you let me know and I will share with all of these happy hour listeners.
Thank you, girl. Appreciate that.
Okay. Yeah. So now, before we get to 3 things you're loving and what you're reading, I just, again, want to just publicly on the show say thank you so much for sharing your story, because I do this show to encourage, inspire women and point them to Jesus. And I just know that there are so many people who are listening who just might be struggling in some ways in their marriage. And so I know that this is going to be just a bright spot and pointing them to the savior of their marriage, which is not themselves or their husband or anyone besides Jesus. And so thank you so much for your vulnerability and your openness. And I love your guys' story so much.
Jamie, thank you. I've loved being on with you.
You're so fun. Okay, so tell me, in your world, besides your granddaughter, what are some 3 things that you're loving?
Well, that was what I was going to say.
Which that can be one of them. I'm just joking. Yes.
Yeah, that was going to be first. You know, what's interesting about being a grandmother, I was like, this really can't be happening. I mean, am I really this old? But I'll tell you what, to be that matriarch really of a grandchild, and what you get to do and how you get to pour into them is just like one of the best things in the world. And so just feeling really blessed and, you know, navigating a new time of life, you know? Yeah, it's new. And so I'm not the mom anymore. I'm a mom to my adult children, and that's a whole nother season of life too, which is really fun. But that's number 1. Let's see. Number 2, you know, Jeff and I, we travel quite a bit. And so it's really fun for us to meet people all across the country. And that's what we do work-wise. But then from a personal standpoint, we're in LA a lot. So we go out and see Lauren and Jason a lot. And so having experiences with our kids is just an amazing thing with their, you know, with their husbands and families, and just how that looks now, where it's just another new section of life. Jeff and I were talking about this the other day over Easter, because, you know, when your kids get married, they have the other side's family as well. And so I was thinking about, if you haven't nurtured your marriage, and when your kids leave, and, you know, I see women that are empty nesters and really struggling. And so being in a good marriage when your kids do leave home, and, you know, like last weekend, Jason and Lauren were in LA, and Brittany and Sean were at Sean's parents. And so we didn't see Brittany and Sean until Sunday. And, you know, what that would be like for people on a holiday if they weren't in a good marriage.
Yeah. It's so true.
You know? Yeah. And so, you know, that's part of it. Golly, girl.
Well, I want to tell you this too, Cheryl. I remember when Aaron and I were newlyweds.
Yeah.
He got a call from a good friend of his that he had gone to college with. And the friend told Aaron that his parents were getting a divorce. And we're, 25 years old. And the guy that's telling him is the same age, and he has an older brother. And I remember thinking, how in the world? And he, you know, I'm newly married 2 years. So it's just, I'm in heaven bliss, because we had a great first couple of years. I mean, it's the best thing ever. But I remember thinking, how after 25 years does someone say, we're done? And it wasn't until, honestly, that it didn't really hit me until we started having kids.
Yeah.
And life got a little bit more chaotic, and there got some more pressures on our marriage and adoption, all kinds of things. And then I realized, if we spent our whole world just revolving around our kids, which to extent I do live at the baseball field a lot because of all my kids, but we also put date nights on the calendar, and we value our marriage. And so it just goes to what you're saying. Is it hit me that the reason that they had such a struggle, and that they chose that with it, if they felt that was their last resort and only thing they could do, they didn't even know how to be married anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I just remember being so sad and so newlywed, and just thinking,
yeah,
how could this happen?
Yeah. And, you know, the last thing I would say about your question is, maybe this is an odd answer, but so, we've been through, I know you talked to Lauren about her accident and everything. And so, these last 5 years have been really super tough. And I mean, the worst trauma that we've ever experienced.
For sure.
But, what I want to say about that is really, God never lets you stop learning, and he's always there. And so I think, even working on yourself and constantly going through new seasons and learning what that's about and really enjoying the journey of life. You're never going to hit the pinnacle of whatever we think that is. We have the ability to really search our souls. And, I've learned a lot about myself in the last 5 years, even how I grew up and things that had affected me there and how that affected a lot of different things. And so just, I think experiencing something like that as a family and being able to grow closer as a family and really never, ever taking your family for granted and life for granted, really.
Yeah. How long had you guys been remarried when the accident happened?
13 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had a big base going on there.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious about that. Yeah. Well, that's, I mean, it was just, that's such a true example of just like, you just, a split second, you never know. And, love your people every day.
Yeah. So anyway.
Okay. So you're loving just life and all kinds of things. What do you, I have a feeling that you're a big time reader. It's just what I'm guessing.
Oh gosh. I laughed when you asked me what I was reading.
What are you reading?
Oh, I read about 3 books at a time.
Okay. You're one of those. Okay. People are either they read books, like lots of books at a time, or they're like a one at a time people.
Yeah. So let's see. This is really interesting. Since I've been putting together this podcast, God reminded me of a book that I read 20 years ago, and it's called Fascinating Womanhood by Helen Andelin. And I thought, do I still have that book? And so I ended up having it in my library, and it was written in 1965. And it talks about a woman being a fascinating woman for her husband. And it is just incredible.
A fascinating woman for her husband.
Yeah. And how do we go about doing that? And, I think we've lost a lot of, it talks about femininity. It talks about how to approach your husband. It is just fabulous.
That seems to me, and I could be just way off and too young to be making this type of statement, but it seems to me like that wording seemed a little before its time. And,
right?
Yeah. I'm just thinking like, what'd you say? 1967?
1965 it was written.
1965, a fascinating woman for your husband. That seems to me as though that would have been like a weird thing to say or think about. Yeah. And I could be wrong because I wasn't even born then. So I may not have the right to say that, but.
Yeah. And Helen was struggling a bit in her marriage, and she couldn't figure out, what the issues were. And so she ended up writing this book, Fascinating Womanhood. And, it just hits home in so many different areas. And I really, honestly, I think every woman should read it. I'm reading a couple different things. I listened to Donald Miller's podcast, Story Brand.
I love it.
Right. And I actually just went to the conference, and it was amazing. But there are a couple books that they've mentioned on the podcast. One of them was called Essentialism, and not a Christian book,
right?
But it talks about the essentialism, what's essential and what's not essential.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a huge focus, these days of, where are we using our time? What are we focused on? How distracted are we with our phones and all this internet that we have? It's incredible.
That's such a good book too. I've heard them talk about that as well for, people in general, but business owners and, women out there making things happen. So a great book. I've heard about that. Yes. I need to get that on my list as well.
Yeah.
Okay, great. You're very well-rounded in your reading. There we go. Fascinating women and, what's essential. Yeah. Cheryl, it has been an absolute joy to have you on the show. And I don't say that lightly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamie.
For coming on. someone who is just, walked roads before. Many of my listeners are younger than myself. And so I know that it is just going to be such an encouragement to get such wisdom from someone who loves Jesus and loves her family and loves her husband. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun.
Guys, I loved hearing Cheryl's story. I knew that you would hear it, and I knew immediately when I talked to Lauren and she gave me like a little snapshot of her mom's story that I needed to hear it from her. It seemed that all was lost, but you know what? God was still moving. I think that's just so evident in their story, and that's what I want you to hear from this. Also, this is my second mother-daughter podcast guest. Did you know that? Do you know who the others are? Okay, can you think? Do you know who it is? For those longtime listeners, you might know. Okay, I'll tell you. Jessica Thompson and Elise Fitzpatrick, both two of my favorite guests of all time. Mother-daughter team right there. Mothers and daughters for the win. All right, guys, don't forget, I told you last week about the Summer Book Club. You can still sign up. We would love to have you join us. Our June book club is from Kristen Schell, and it's The Turquoise Table. It's a great read to start with summer with, and here is a little tidbit of her and I's conversation about the book club. Okay, guys, I have a little something special to add to you at the end. I know that you just loved that conversation with Cheryl, but I told you last week about the Happy Hour Summer Book Club, and I have the author of June's book club with me right now. Hi, Kristen.
Hello, Jamie.
Okay, so when I was picking books for the summer, I was like, you know what? I think I want my first book to be someone that everyone in the world has telling me that I would love to hang out with, number one. And number two, lives in Austin, so we can actually do that. And number three, has just an amazing book. And you were like, check, check, check. So thank you for being our first book club of the summer.
Oh my gosh, I'm honored. I'm so excited.
So fun. Okay, so I don't even know this, and I'm embarrassed. I'm about to ask you this question. Is this your first book?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I take back my embarrassment.
Nice.
Okay. So it's called The Turquoise Table. Tell me briefly, where did this movement, I'm going to call it that, come from? And then what made you think I'm going to write about it in a book?
Well, 3.5 years ago, I put an ordinary picnic table in my front yard, painted it bright turquoise because it's my favorite color.
Uh-huh.
And I plopped it out in my front yard as a hope of getting to know neighbors and as a welcoming place to kind of hang out with friends and do life in an ordinary place, my front yard.
Like, go figure. It doesn't sound hard, right?
It is not
rocket
hard.
Science. No.
Which is why I did it, because I'm a mother of 4, like you were super, super busy. I needed something super simple and an easy way to hang out with friends.
Okay. So you put it there, and then did that actually start working?
Yes. Like immediately. I was so shocked. I mean, truly.
Okay. So you have dinners out there? You
Sometimes
just hang out there?
Both. I kind of go with the whole, sometimes spontaneity works, and then sometimes, casual planned events work. And it's a perfect, healthy mix.
Okay. So this is all about like building community, basically, which I love. And so you put this turquoise table in your front yard, which is super cool. Where'd you buy your first table from? Do you know?
I got it at Lowe's because it was, cheap, and they delivered.
We have those same tables in our backyard.
Uh-huh. Wow.
I need to paint them.
You need nifty turquoise.
That's all I need to do.
Color.
Oh, nifty turquoise. Okay, I have those same tables from Lowe's because they dropped them off at my house and put them together for me.
Right?
Yes. Okay, so you did the table. What led to this book, The Turquoise Table?
Well, so what happened was then, my next door neighbor wanted a table, and then, friend 3 or 4 doors over wanted a table, and then my sister-in-law in San Antonio wanted a turquoise table. And so pretty soon I was, kind of encouraging women and talking to them about how simple this was and what an easy, welcoming place it was to gather. And it just, then a friend in South Carolina, and then a friend in Nebraska. And pretty soon we had this whole community of people. We call ourselves front yard people, and who wanted to live life outdoors in a simple, easy way and connect face to face.
Okay. I love it.
And that just led to the book.
I love it so much. I love the message of community. I love the message of just making something that you already have. You didn't have to go out and do anything. I mean, you bought a table from Lowe's, but I know they cost $100,
Right.
So you bought a table, you painted it, and then you were opening yourself up to community, which is something that we talk about a lot at the happy hour. So I think that's number 4 reason why I picked your book, is because I really, really, really love the message. Okay, so the happy hour book club, which I am so happy because one of my favorite things, I don't think I've even shared this yet, one of my favorite things a couple of years ago that I was a part of was a book club. Have you ever been in a book club?
Yes. I love them.
I loved it so much, and just I moved and life and 4 kids, and it just got hard, but it was so much fun for me. And I actually have been throwing around the idea of starting a book club, at my house, like for real. It has nothing to do with my podcast, but I thought I'll start here. And so we're reading together. And if you want to join, you can go to my webpage, jamieivey.com/book club. All you do is sign up. We welcome you into a Facebook group. And then here's my favorite part of the whole thing. And this is exciting about with Kristen as well, is that we're going to actually have a book club at my house, and you're coming, Kristen.
Yes. Oh, I cannot wait.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait as well. And maybe we'll have to sit around my table, but it's not turquoise, but maybe I can get a turquoise tablecloth, and we can
maybe I'll bring a can of paint.
Maybe you'll bring a can of paint and we can paint my table. That would be so much fun. Okay. But seriously, I'm so thankful that you're the first book, and it's going to be a lot of fun to read it in June with ladies and talk about it in the Facebook group. And then have you join us. And just so you know, if you guys are listening, you want to be a part of it, I'm going to tell you in the Facebook group how you can actually come to the book club. So we'll also put it on Facebook Live, because that's a thing, even though I've only done one Facebook Live video ever.
Too.
And we probably did it mutually with our friend. We did it with our friend Logan. Yes. Because she's teaching us all the things.
All the things.
But we're going to do it again. Kristen, me and you, we're going to see if it works.
Awesome.
But okay, guys, sign up. And I hope to see you in June for the book club. And then in a couple weeks, I'll tell you about the July book club. And then a couple weeks later, the August book club. We got 3 awesome books this summer. Thanks, Kristen.
Oh, thank you so much, Jamie.
All right, guys, don't forget, go to jamieivey.com/book club. And I hope to see you sign up, join us in the Facebook group, and then come to my house for the party. All right, guys, today's show is edited by Logan Garza, and the music is from Jason Poe. Hopefully you heard last week's show with Amber Newberry, because it was powerful. She shared her story of walking through trauma and how God was in the business of healing. Her story was such a testimony of God never abandoning her, even in the midst of some super hard trials and trauma. And I've had great feedback from that show, so go back and listen to that one. This Friday is the Happy Half Hour, and I'm bringing back a favorite, y'all. Bianca Olthoff from episode number 103 is my guest. And as usual, we had a great time. I love her to death. You're going to love our conversation. I am also so extremely excited for what God has in store for her. So make sure you listen, because you might want to be a part of it. And it involves something that I'm also passionate about. So fun talking with her. Guys, enjoy your week. Share the show with a girlfriend and have a happy hour with a friend. I'll see you next week.